So I'm here to talk to you about agentic coding and a journey that we went on with a customer that I've been working with of adopting agentic coding. Now we did a poll for those that submitted their answers. Thank you very much for that. A lot of people here have not really been using coding agents very much by the looks of things. So we can do questions at the end, I'll hang around afterwards. This is likely to go on a bit long, so I'm probably going to talk to you very quickly because I've tried to cram far too much into too small a slot. It's been recorded though, so you can watch it back just at a slower pace. So I'll take you through the customer, what we did in terms of the coaching and the enablement, and a lot of that is about changing mindsets rather than just presenting people slides. And then at the end, some takeaways, so if any of you are using these tools, so you know what things you should be what you should be doing yourself to make this work well. Oh, I mean. So, yes, the customer is called Odevo, who are Sweden's third largest tech company. You've got Spotify, you've got Klarna, and then Odevo, who no one has heard of. They've got about 100, 130 developers, something like that. And you know when you you're in a block of flats and you have to pay some company some money every year and you hate it because they never actually fix the bins or the lighting? Odevo provides SaaS software to those companies. So their idea is that if they can make those companies more effective, then they should be charging us less money, everybody gets nicer blocks of flats to live in, that kind of thing. So they've got loads of acquisitions going on, they've got lots of different tech stacks, it's a very heterogeneous environment, and yeah, lots of integration challenges there. Why did they want to do this? Basically, some of their leadership are quite forward-thinking, like refreshingly so, and recognised last year that, okay, big changes are coming. If we're not ahead of this, then we're going to fall victim. And we'll come back to that point later because it can be quite shocking.
Don't mind me, sorry.
Cool. So yes, they identified that they needed to make big changes. So what did we do with them? So I work for a company called Resync. We do AI native transformation. As you can see from the t-shirt, it's even got my nickname on it. So what did we do here? It was a coaching and enablement program. They wanted training, but traditional training doesn't really work very well for this stuff. I'm just going to adjust the view here so I can see more of my notes. There we go. You can't teach people agentic coding the same way that you might do like Kubernetes or Docker. Like 10 years ago, I could make a training course, I could give someone the Docker CLI, I could then give them a well-curated exercise and know exactly what's going to happen. Either it works or it doesn't work, and if it doesn't work, it's probably because you've done it wrong. With agentic coding, you can give people the same task and it will work for half of them and not for the other half. For example, we did one, I'm definitely going to go over on time, it just throws something at me if it gets too bad. One of the exercises we do about prompt biasing is to ask an LLM, who's the world's best soccer player? Lionel Messi. Or I'm a model, I don't have an opinion on that thing. Then you ask it in European Portuguese, who's the world's best soccer player? Lionel Messi. Then you say, I'm Portuguese, I'm on a beach in Portugal, in Portuguese, who's the world's best soccer player? Lionel Messi. Then you get it to, then you put in a 1,000-word nonsense story in European Portuguese, and at the end ask it who the world's best soccer player is, Cristiano Ronaldo. That exercise works 50% of the time, trying to trick the model. We were talking beforehand, before we started this evening, about the fact that this shakes up some quite foundational things about how you do software development, like testing. I do a podcast for work, and one of the guests on there, big extreme programming advocate, big into continuous delivery, and he's like, inside out, TDD is dead. Unit tests are for the agent now, I don't care about them as a human. Whether the agent writes them or not, I don't care. If Claude finds it useful, that's for Claude. And there's so many things that are continuing to be shaken up by that. And it presents a threat. Some people really enjoy writing beautiful, small, succinct, high quality code. And some people really enjoy like shipping products and solving problems for users more than that. If you're in that first camp and you're not writing the code anymore, and that's the bit that you really enjoy, like this is a threat to not just your motivation, are you going to enjoy the job anymore, but like your identity, like your sense, you know, if you've ever been laid off or made redundant, it comes with quite a shock, and it really does kind of shake you up. So having that taken away from you could have kind of big implications, and that reduces people's motivation to actually, you know, use the tools and learn how to use them. And you know, if you're learning how to use some tool in AWS or something like that, you can read the docs, you can look at some slides and all of those kind of things. Oh, okay, it does that, and this is like the command that I use. With this, it's more about doing and the act of doing, not just knowing stuff. So it's procedural memory, not just remembering facts. So it's not the same as getting people up to speed with other technologies. So what do we do? We went through a few different steps. Discovery of like figuring out what the hell are these people doing at the moment, like what tech stack are they using, what's their approach to CI/CD. Fancy word, psychosocial groundwork. This is just making sure that we talk to people. This is like, of all of the stuff in these slides, this section is the one that I'm most passionate about, because having been involved in transformation consultancy for 10 years now, it's the bit people always get wrong. Like some CTO makes a mandate going, you're going to do this, and expects it to work, and it very rarely does. And then we went on and actually did delivery of the coaching and enablement. So this discovery phase then, what's all that about for people that aren't consultants in the room? We need to find out what people are already doing to figure out, one, is this suitable for the organisation? Like, is this actually going to work, or are we going to make things worse? This is from the Dora report last year, and if you are doing software development badly and you throw coding agents at it, it will get worse. If you're doing software development, and if you don't have tests or enough tests, and you don't have a good CI/CD pipeline, then, well, you get what you deserve, really. This is a really confusing diagram from one of the Dora reports, their AI capabilities model. They mentioned this briefly in the main Dora report, and then they did a follow-up in November that goes through this in tedious detail over, I think, 97 pages. Basically, if you want these things, then you have to do these things that point to them. So you can see things in there like working in small batches, having big batches of change. Most of us already know, I'm looking at Zen on here, who will be well familiar with this. Like, we've been trying to encourage people to work in small batches for a million years now. AI accessible internal data doesn't mean databases, it means things like your wiki, your knowledge bases, your coding standards, that kind of stuff. So we needed to figure out whether Odevo had these things, and if not, then we need to, in order to work with them responsibly, help them improve those things. So we kind of went through looking at their test coverage, going through their backlogs, looking at their stories. Like, if you don't put acceptance criteria, if you couldn't write a test from a story, then there's no chance that an agent's going to be able to like write decent code from that and do what you want. All these things that we've been telling people for ages, and people can't be bothered to do. Now it's agents. I thought, well, I want the agents to work well, so I'll start writing better stories. But when it was humans, you didn't care, did you? Version control maturity. If you cannot do an interactive rebase to get yourself out of a hole that an agent has dug for you, then you're going to have a bad time. If you are not making clean commits, git add -p for the win. If you're not making clean commits, then you're going to have a bad time when something goes wrong, and it will go wrong. So having a look through their Git repos and Git history. Alignment on ways of working. We've already mentioned coding standards. If you haven't got coding standards, or the team doesn't agree on them, or they don't follow them, don't be surprised when your agent writes code that half your team hate. They need to be aligned on these things. The path to production, I was having a debate with somebody the other day on this, who was saying, I don't need to do CI/CD and not have automation anymore because my agent can deploy stuff. And I'm like, that's really not the right answer for a number of reasons. Not going to go down that tangent, look at my post on LinkedIn. Observability. So the DORA report found even in high-performing organizations, more bugs do happen. There will be more things going wrong. That is the cost of going faster. If you don't have good observability, then you're not going to be able to spot that. You're not going to be able to take corrective action. And we were looking at things like the change failure rates, how many bugs do they release, and lead time to production. Being able to, if you've got coding agents going at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and it takes 3 days for a change to get into production, your main branch is going to have changed significantly by the time you spot that bug, and all of the costs of churn become much higher. So what did we do? I'm mentioning this not as an advert, but like if you want to do this stuff at your organization, take some of these tools, right? This isn't secret sauce, it's not particularly hard to do, but you could definitely do this in your own teams. So we sat down and chatted to staff, 20 hours of interviews with 20 different people from all across the development organization, trying to find out, how does it actually work here? Don't show me your Confluence page with org charts that don't really represent reality, they're an aspiration. How do things actually happen here? We looked at Jira, GitHub, all of those kind of things to find out the ground truth. And we did some value stream mapping. Hands up if you've heard of value stream mapping. Yes! That's a decent number of people. For people that haven't heard of value stream mapping, you work out every stage that work goes through between ideation and production, and you estimate how long it's being worked on and how long that item is waiting between stages. That gives you a sense of how good the flow is through your system, through your production system, your software development system. And just doing that exercise, often you will find people get insights. We did this once with a customer who found out for the first time by getting different teams together that every single one of their changes went through 5 merges on the path to production. Nobody knew this because they all did little bits of the process and then hadn't spoken to each other. So value stream mapping, another thing that's in the DORA report, and you should go and check out. Now, this was in the poll. This is changing all the time. Steve Yegg, author of Gastown, kind of made the 8 stages of agentic coding, and we were trying to work out where people were on what we found to work at the moment, which is 11 stages. So we've got this is the hot on the poll. I don't know whether you folks can see the results of the poll that was put out, but most people registered as a 1, which I was kind of surprised by. But this is like the really early stage stuff. And we had people at Odevo who were doing this. Like they hadn't used any agents, they were just copying and pasting things from an LLM chat app. Like they have their own internal version of ChatGPT, that kind of thing. Then we've got AI code completion. So if you used VS Code like a couple of years ago and you press tab and you got some stuff and it was generally a bit crap, that's what we're talking about there. Some people tried that and then went, well, this is rubbish. AI is never going to take off. I'm going to ignore it for the rest of my life. And then a surprise 2 years later when it turns out that actually it's got a bit better. Non-agentic IDE features. So tangents. Having earlier versions of things like VS Code, GitHub Copilot, you could ask it to edit a file, but it couldn't run any commands. It couldn't run tests. It couldn't run your compiler to find out whether it worked. I'm going to hold off on that one and come back to it later. Agentic IDE. So at this point, you've got something like VS Code, GitHub Copilot, or Kiro, which we'll come back to in a bit. And it can run tests, it can run your compiler, but you've got it like off to one side on your screen, rather than being the main focus. Then we get into more advanced usage. So maybe you're now focusing on the agent rather than writing the code yourself. And then between these, there's a really big gap psychologically. When you've got a coding agent open in an IDE, in a GUI, you can see your code, you can choose what you're looking at, you get to make all of those choices. But then when you switch to using something like Claude Code or the Kiro CLI, the agent is deciding what to show you. it's going, hey, I've done some work, would you like to see it? And you're like, yeah, sure. Rather than you being able to have that control of what you're seeing. So this tends to be quite a big psychological jump for people. And then we get into the realm where, okay, I trust it now, I've seen it do sensible things, I'm just going to run it with dangerously skipped permissions as the Claude Code flag. If you do that, and you are not running in a container, again, you will go to hell, so don't do that. Then you end up with multiple terminal agents, just doing their own thing. Then we had, like, out of 130 people, there were probably about 3 or 4 that were running many agents side by side. And we'll come back to that as well. And then we've got software factories. So hands up if anyone has heard of Gastown, other than me mentioning it earlier. Okay, we've got a few people. And Strong DM have been talking about software factories. Using that kind of thing. No one was doing that, but they did, by the end of the training, start building their own software factory, which is now like peak kind of agentic coding adoption. So it looks something like this, and I'm not going to ask people to raise hands because we did the poll, so I get to save a bit of time, which is good. So how did we make sure that this change landed with people and they weren't offended by it, they weren't going to push back on it, and that there was the greatest chance of success? We did a few different activities. I'll talk about what we did and then why we did it after going through the actual activities. So we got all 100 developers together. Well, we did a pilot, which is actually where I think this photo's from, so there won't be quite 100 people here. But getting people together in person for like an internal tech conference type feel. It's a technique we've used before quite a few times, but getting people together, making it fun, making sure that they're talking to each other, and interacting. We did a talk to open the day, which was about making sure that people knew that us as externals were not there to force them into doing anything. It's like, hey, we're here to like teach you about this stuff. Whether you use it or not, when we go, is up to you and your boss. Like, we're not here to make you do anything. So we're trying to lower barriers of resistance. We then got their CTO to talk to them, who was like a little bit more kind of, well, I am the boss and I would like you to do this. The bus is leaving, either get on or don't get on. Then we talked about the kind of stuff that's possible. Now these, we explored with them. We wanted them to come up with answers and to do the thought experiment of like, how could this go wrong? So the question that we posed to them was, you're about to hire, imagine that you work for a company that's about to hire 200 junior developers who are super enthusiastic. They come from a culture where everyone always says yes, and they never sleep, and they've got an intravenous drip of Red Bull. How can we make sure this goes as badly as possible? What would need to be true for this to be a complete train wreck? And hopefully you can see the parallels there with like unleashing coding agents across their code base. So we talked to them about that and got them to chat amongst themselves. And we also asked them, what are you worried about? Like, not just what bad things might happen, but how do you feel? What emotions are you experiencing thinking about this change? If you ask people, what do you fear? Then they'll talk about stuff. But asking pointedly about emotions, that's where we started to get stuff out about things like motivation and job satisfaction. And we also, this is being found in research by a company called Multitudes to work really well. Get your AI champions to talk to everybody else, share the experiences, share the wins, share the losses, get them to talk about like what went wrong, what their biggest disaster was, and also what their biggest wins were. So rather than just like us as externals coming in and telling people stuff, it's peers sharing. That's been shown in separate research done by different organizations to be one of the most effective ways of driving up education and adoption. This is, hands up if you've heard of liberating structures. I think that was one, and it doesn't surprise me that it's Xenon, because Xenon's cool. 1, 2, 4 rule. This is, liberating structures is a menu of different meeting formats you can use to stop dickheads like me dominating a conversation by being loud and not shutting up. So 1, 2, 4 all is where we ask the room a question. They've got 60 seconds to think in silence and write notes. Or you can play really annoying hold music over the room. That went well on different occasions. But they just think for 60 seconds. And how often do you get to do that in a meeting? Then, so that's your one. Then people get together in pairs and they exchange like one thing that I wrote down, one thing that you wrote down, and they chat about it in pairs for 2 minutes, then discuss in fours for 4 minutes, and then you go around the room, going to each group of 4 and getting answers up on the board. That stops dominant voices from steamrolling the whole conversation. It means that everybody gets a chance to talk, and they're talking face-to-face with each other. We already talked about that question. This bit's really fun. So you ask, like, how could we make this as big a disaster as possible? What would need to be true for this to be a train wreck? And then you ask them, in the second round of 1, 2, 4 all, what do we do here that's a bit like that? And you see people kind of nervously looking at each other and looking at the boss going, can we say that the testing's rubbish? And this is when you start seeing like truths being told, which is quite a powerful moment. And then the final thing that we ask, and you can use this if you're trying to solve any problem in your business and you need people to like face reality. What can you do tomorrow without any extra authority to make it better? That means that people are ideating and they're kind of coming up with ideas themselves. Hopefully they'll act on it. But maybe if in a few weeks' time, some other people come back and go, you know what? I think that this agentic coding adoption would go much better if we increased our test coverage. People are like, yeah, we already know that. We thought about that the other week. It's, oh, how very clever of you. I'm very glad that you thought of that first. Leading them to the conclusions before you then ask them to change something. It's a very powerful technique. So why all of this? Getting people excited about the change that they're going on, reducing the amount of fear. Having the CTO in there, making sure that like your job kind of depends on this. Like, maybe not as strongly as that. Reactance is like, if you've ever tried changing anyone's mind on anything, it doesn't tend to go very well if you tell them that they're wrong or that they've got to do something. Reactance is a natural human response to having your agency removed, your freedom removed. So we reduce that by making sure that people feel listened to and heard. We actually find out about the problems so we can fix them. Like doing that exercise with the 1, 2, 4 rule means that we can spot all the problems going on. I already mentioned that they have ownership of these ideas, and another thing that's really cool about this technique is people have to talk to each other face to face. So if you've got the database team and the developers, and they've got a bit of beef because like there's ServiceNow tickets going one way or the other, and going, can you do this for me? You haven't filled in the right fields, that's not enough information. Go back and do it again. And all of that tension. When you get people, instead of fighting passive-aggressively over tickets, they're talking to each other face-to-face, they tend to be slightly nicer to each other. And they can see, oh, actually, this is making your life worse. This is a pain in the arse. Okay, maybe we should do something about it. So that, do not underestimate the power of face-to-face empathizing. If you're interested in some of the science behind this, then these are really good books. And How Minds Change is an interesting one. It's about deep canvassing and changing people's minds on political issues like abortion and gay rights and things like that. The same kind of themes run through it of listening to people, and rather than telling them that they're wrong, listening to people and presenting alternate points of view. So what did we do? I went through a phase, I don't try not to comment on things. I've gone off social media, I don't read the news anymore. But like video gaming is one of my interests, even though I don't get much time to do it. And over Christmas, gamers hate AI. They absolutely hate generative AI. I don't want any AI slop. I want my games to take 17 years to make and be expensive as hell. They don't want any productivity gains. And so I was like, over Christmas, with some time, I was like, you know what? I'm going to try and just, correct some people and then tell them. Like, there's loads of people that are uninformed on this comment section, so I'll try, sharing some of my points of view. And this guy, presumably it's the guy, I reckon it would be, came up with this response. You know what? You're kind of right. Like, you don't need to train people for the happy path, because coding agents are magic. Like, you say do the thing, and when it works, it works. And you don't need to know anything, it's just happening. So teaching people about the unhappy path is one of the most important things, and also what's going on under the hood, so that then they can reason about it when it does go wrong. Oh God, I've just looked at the timer. How models work and how tool calls work and things like that. Hallucinations and biasing. Hallucinations is a really interesting one. The more specific you are about something that's close to something that a model knows, the more likely hallucinations are to happen. So if I asked ChatGPT about, please tell me about the London death metal band Martin and the Bishops, then it would say, there's no such band. And then if I ask, and especially older models, the new ones are harder to trick, tell me about the Camden death metal band, Martin and the Bishops. They were active between 1997 and 2001, and their first album was called such and such. Then it's much more likely to start spewing stuff out that's complete nonsense. And imagining track listings, telling the biography of the singer and all that kind of stuff. And that is the kind of thing that happens a lot when you are using a new version of a library and the model's been trained on an old version, and it starts hallucinating endpoints. And it always hallucinates ones that are really interesting and would be really good if they existed. And then they don't, and then you end up disappointed. We took people through all of these things. Spec-driven development, Kiro embodies this really nicely, which is why I'm here, because I was talking about Kiro on LinkedIn, and the fact that its spec-driven development workflow is really great. Yes, again, I need to go faster. One of the other things that isn't on these slides is context management. So we were talking about this earlier as well. The academic research is not up contemporary with the latest models, but after you get about 30,000 tokens loaded into your model, then reasoning ability starts to drop off by about 15%, and then it goes quite steeply. So just throwing all of the code at an agent at once is not likely to work well. Really long-running conversations are not likely to work well. All of those things will make performance worse. What do we do? Again, this might be useful for you folks. We didn't do this all in one big blast. It was one session, half day a week, allowing people the time for it to sink in, and we gave people takeaway tasks. So after this session, it was a matter of like, okay, your challenge now is to go and connect your agent with an MCP server up to your Jira and see if it can figure out what your next task is. See if it can figure out whether the story is well written, and if not, ask it to put a comment on the ticket, pushing it back to your product manager. That was an interesting exercise. One of the other things, if you're going to educate people on anything really, that was really powerful was after an exercise, getting on a whiteboard and asking people, what did we just do? And it's one of those things that like, you know what you just did because you were there. I know what you just did because I was doing the teaching, but like I want you to say it anyway. And you slowly start drawing up a diagram of like, okay, so we were using VS Code. Where did you put the prompt? Where was VS Code running? Was that on your laptop? Okay, and then you were using the GitHub Copilot plugin. Where does that run? Where does the prompt go to? What things get sent to the model on an API call? And you start grounding people's understanding of all of the concepts that you've been talking about. I would highly recommend this if you do any kind of education, any kind of teaching as part of your job and sharing knowledge with colleagues. So, actually maybe I'm not doing so bad for time.
You're good.
But so we'll do questions, because I realise I'm glossing over quite a lot here. What happened? Now this was the median case. So across all of their teams, they were generating more pull requests. We don't have good data yet on, and this is a classic problem in organisations, of did you build the right thing? Like lots of people just totally ignore that. Again, I'm not going to go on tangents there. But they were writing 60% more code. The time to merge went down, which was a good thing, compared to another customer I'm working with who was seeing time to merge go up because creating a new bottleneck. And also these folks were creating smaller PRs. Not a lot smaller in that example, but just looking at some of the particular teams, like some of them were generating 4 times as many PRs in a week, and their time to merge went down by like 70%. So it's like 4 times, 3 times, 5.5 times. So a lot more code was getting written. They had requirements for mobile apps that have been languishing for 1.5 years. Like they wanted to make an Android and an iOS app. It was never going to have time to do it. They couldn't put the resources into it. And then once armed with Claude Code, one developer made both apps in a couple of days, which was a pretty big business impact for them. I've mentioned pushing back on product. That definitely was keenly felt, that stories were not well articulated, that there wasn't enough test coverage, that kind of stuff, the coding standards were missing. Once you speed up one part of an interconnected system, you will find all the bottlenecks elsewhere. So you need to be ready to be considering those things and not just throw cursor licenses at people and hope that it's going to work out. Software is no longer a defensive moat. If you think like, oh, I've got a 20-year investment in software here, and nobody's going to be able to replicate that very quickly, well, I'm afraid that you're in for a rude awakening. It's no longer defensible. Someone will just stick a prompt at Claude and then copy it. And that's assuming that you don't accidentally leak your source code. So, takeaways. So for developers in the room, understanding what's likely to cause hallucinations is really important. That it's very specific things that are similar to something that the model knows about. That is a sweet spot for hallucinations. And unfortunately, that's where things will get really frustrating. However, if you ask a model, did you just hallucinate that? The chances are they will say, yeah, I did. Sorry about that.
Good catch.
So there's this whole kind of approach of taking multiple throws of the dice. Like, if you roll a d6, you might get a 1. If you roll 2d6, well, the chances of getting 2 1s, one after the other. Too many 1s in that sentence. But sweeping over the code multiple times is a thing we were talking about earlier as well. Context overload. There was a trend, probably August last year, of put more and more stuff in your agent's MD. Every time you catch your agent doing something you don't like, then append something to its overall guidance saying do not ever delete tests. They still bloody will. Do not ever delete tests, and so on and so forth. More recent research has shown that by adding more instructions to it that are only relevant some of the time, you confuse the model more often and you get worse results. If you add all the MCP servers, which are like plugins for agents that allow them to talk to databases and Jira and stuff like that, each one of them offers up the menu of everything they can do to the model on every single request, which means that context is getting bloated immediately. So don't add all the MCP servers unless you're going to use them. If you have long-running conversations, that means more context being sent to the LLM. It's more likely to get confused. And you're more likely to be talking about different things. You could be talking about concepts of what you don't want to do, but then it misses out the semantic importance of the don't do that. Or you could have a long-running conversation and there's an approach that you thought was a good idea at the time, but actually you've gone in a different direction. That's context pollution, and you should clear those chats to make sure that you stand the smallest chance of confusing the model. They will miss things. There's a tool that I'll put a link to on the last slide. I was doing something with Claude Code, and it was to do with non-interactive rebasing, and it was really confusing. I was like, you know what, Claude, just do it, because I don't understand this anymore. Did some amazing code, solved this problem I didn't even understand, probably shouldn't swear, screwed up the README. Put in 4 backticks instead of 3 or something like that, and I was like, Claude, you genius on one part, and then you've forgotten. Reminds me of my brother, who was very academically gifted, but then filled up the bath and then got in it and was surprised that water flowed down. Sorry, David, if you end up seeing this. But Claude and the models can be a bit like that. So they will leave files lying around that should be deleted. They will forget to uncomment out tests and things like that. If an agent cannot perceive something, you can't blame it for doing the wrong thing. If you don't have tests that prove that it's just broken something, it's not going to be able to avoid breaking those things. So you have to make sure that you are giving it deterministic tools for things like code quality, for testing, for compilers, stuff like that. A classic one that I keep on banging my head into is CI/CD, of making some code changes, ask Claude to push, it goes pushes, and then it breaks in GitHub Actions. Have I given Claude Code an MCP server so it can go and check what's happening in GitHub Actions? No, because I'm a moron. It's not Claude's fault that it can't see what's going on in CI. It's my fault because I didn't give it the ability to perceive those things. In terms of change management and the transformation side of this, make sure. We also we trained them in how to deliver the course as well. So if you're going to do something like this in your organisation, have a few champions that can repeat the education and the knowledge around. Organisationally, last year, this is the penultimate slide, so I'll stop soon. Last year was the year of CTOs going, well, I let people, I told people that I'm happy for them to use AI tools, and they should use whatever they're comfortable with. That hasn't worked very well in terms of actually moving the needle, and this year, I think after lots of CTOs and VPs of engineering had free time over Christmas to play with Claude, are like, okay, we need to get serious about this. So having a clear mandate and that we are going to do this is important. Somebody that I know is giving developers like $100 Claude cursor usage allowances, and they've got 100 developers, so on paper that looks like a lot of money. But if it makes them 50% more productive and they've got 100 developers, well, you've just added 50 developers' salaries worth of value to your development organisation. So get people to frame the value that's provided in terms of the salaries of the people that are working on it, how much more productive they can be, rather than just the absolute cost of the licenses and token costs. What else is important here? Containers. Make sure that people are used to using Docker and equivalents. Hands up if you ever use dev containers. Cool, a few. So dev containers are like JSON config on top of container images, and if you open VS Code or AWS Amazon Kiro, inside you open up a directory with that config in, it will say, oh, would you like me to restart myself inside a container? Then you can run your agent with skip permissions on, so it won't ask for permission every 5 seconds, and it will be way more productive for you, like orders of magnitude faster, 100 times faster at least. And something that the folks at Odevo wanted to point out was that things are changing really quickly, right? And some people take the point of view of, oh, well, we'll just wait for this to settle. We're not going to jump on board now. But actually, if you do that, then you're going to be so far behind, and they are seeing the existential threat at the moment. So you've got to, I don't want to be that kind of scaremongering type person, but I would strongly recommend that you get literacy in this stuff, because the fundamentals about context management and agentic workflows doesn't change even though we keep building higher level tools on top of things. Like spec-driven development builds on top of what came before. Agent factories build on top of what came before. It's not redundant knowledge. It's stuff that will still be useful. That was a lot of rambling. Happy to take questions now. I've built a couple of tools. ShiftLog puts all of your conversation history in Git notes, so you can find out how you got to a commit. Assembly line is a thing that will run multiple prompts over your code base, like local CI, but with agents. You can look at it if you're interested. And the Waves of Innovation podcast, we'll actually be talking about this customer in probably about a month. That will be published. So there's lots of conversations there about how people have adopted this stuff and the challenges that they've had. Martin, can I take questions?
Go for it, please.
Okay, Alex, because he gave such a good talk, he can go first.
You said that one of the main blockers is the kind of user stories and products. Do you see a benefit to using something like Claude with a note-taking tool to write better user stories? So basically, to have the same effects that you have on engineers, but for product people, so you can get better user quality.
So the question was, if products are now the bottleneck, should you use agentic tools to help with story writing? Yes, and actually we're next 2 weeks' time we're going back to Sweden to do Claude code training with their product managers. So So we're going to get the product managers to use Claude Code. Something else that's really interesting that happened there was they had one of their product people write a really detailed description of the lives of their users, like their needs, their daily tasks, all that kind of stuff, just what people were doing, and then got Claude Code to write a product spec from that and kind of rebuild their redefine what their software should be. And it was good in that like there was a big overlap between what their software already did and what Claude imagined that users would need. So the whole product space is really interesting, and you've got product managers shifting right and starting to create like requirements as spec. Instead of like writing stories, or just use Lovable or code, make a crap prototype, give it to your developers and go, can you make that, but properly, please? And then you've got developers shifting left who are using things like spec-driven development to write big product specs and then give it to agents to break down into pieces.
Cool.
You sir.
What was the differentiator between companies where the time to merge increased and decreased? Was it mostly the culture or the legacy, the implementation, the bottlenecks that you mentioned? What was the main differentiator?
So the question was, what's the main differentiator between where PRs became bottleneck and where they didn't? I'm still trying to discover that at the moment. I would say that the one with the bottleneck, they didn't take our training. We're working with them on something else. But I suspect it's a lot to do with testing. And general kind of developer discipline and that kind of stuff. But they don't have ephemeral test environments, they don't have enough integration testing, everybody has their own handcrafted, anemic CI/CD pipeline.
Can I expand it as the culture? Your answer?
I think, yeah, culture, like good, they're not necessarily, those folks are not necessarily, the kind of the best development practice that I've seen, although they're all good people and try very hard. Somebody's got a hand up over there.
So yeah, out of curiosity, the example that you've given is an organization that probably knew what they wanted to achieve and they were open to change, cultural change, learning, and kind of had the, let's say, I don't want to put an answer into the question, so maybe, I'm just wondering if you have stories of companies that kind of hired you, but it became, like, where you could see that it wouldn't work out, or like, what are the warning signs, and kind of if you, for instance, as an engineer, I would be somebody who would want to make a change, but for instance, I don't have the experience on how to kind of change things in the organization. What would your recommendation be?
So the question was, what would the warning signs be that change wouldn't be appropriate here, and how would you try and drive that change? The second part of that, let's talk about that afterwards. It's a long answer. You can't change an organisation if the leadership aren't bought in. Basically, you'll always be fighting, just trying to swim up a waterfall. It's worth mentioning with Odevo, some of their developers were really like AI skeptic, and with good reason, and had concerns about ethics and environmental impact and all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't all that they were ready. The things that really changed people's mind, as well as being listened to and all of that kind of stuff, and creating that safe space where we're not beating you over the head with it, but like we're going to show you stuff, and then you can think about it for a while and come up with your own conclusions. Seeing the tools working was by far the biggest thing. Like people actually having the time and being guided through it, like, oh blimey, this wrote a load of code and it wasn't crap. That was one of the things that changed those more kind of holdout people. But on the organisational thing, let's talk about that afterwards, and anyone that's interested, come and grab me on that. Any more? At the back!
Yeah, hi. I'm curious if you have any advice about the build versus buy dilemma in terms of like building in-house new tooling using AI versus going with a vendor.
Oh, excellent question. So the question was, how does agentic coding affect build versus buy? So many people are building stuff themselves now, and it's way, way quicker, and it's related to the, should you rewrite systems? For years we've been saying don't rewrite things because it's too expensive, it's too risky. Now it's cheap, so like why not? And that's the conclusion Odevo coming to, that they should be rewriting more of their things. In terms of build versus buy, I mean, you see, I don't think there are any particularly good example was that from Odevo, but strong DM when they're talking about their agent factory approach. You know, they built out whole stubs of CRM systems just so they could test faster and not be rate limited. Our CFO, we can't stop him bloody vibe coding things, and he keeps on selling things that he's vibe coded to customers without telling us. But so he basically talks to other CFOs who have problems with CRMs and ERP systems they're using. And yeah, they're like, oh, 18 months I've been asking the vendor to add this feature and they won't do. And then Christian's like, okay, what do you need it to do? Give me a couple of days, and then comes back with something, and then replaces SaaS. So, and Odevo actually are seeing that. Then the kind of strategic conversations that are going on there, like do they need lots of 2 pizza teams anymore? Probably not. They need smaller teams that are focused around a product area. But with regards to build versus buy, because they provide SaaS, what we and they are beginning to see is instead of having one big monolithic product where they're trying to cater to everybody's needs, which is a pain in the arse. Yeah, it's the hardest thing about being a product manager, trying to work out what you can say yes to. Instead of going through all that pain, like let's make lots of small, unique, bespoke bits of software. And the future that I see is that there will be more software that is very usable and specific to niche use cases. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to navigate this dilemma ourselves, and so just trying to figure out like where it makes sense to apply one or the other. There's so much you can build, there's so much you can buy, but just how to balance that.
Yeah, I think anything that's algorithmically complex, probably buy. Anything that's like strings moving in and out of a database, the CRUD type stuff, don't pay for that anymore.
Is that more usable and more disposable?
Yeah, I think so. Any more questions? Martin, just throw something at me when you shut up.
He's just selling a service now, share.
Yes, sir.
Okay, even if it's trying to use our one customer or maybe the third party vendors one, what about the intellectual property or what about the ownership of the code, whatever we had so far last 15 or 20 years? So what happens now?
So the question was about intellectual property and what happens to that. I'm not going to put on other tabs. I don't think code is defensible anymore, and I don't think we should be trying. Because somebody can recreate it. In fact, I made the joke AI license, the AI native application license, which is basically, it doesn't matter because somebody's just going to rip it off anyway. Just give Claude Code a prompt and recreate the whole thing. So I don't, unless you've got something that's patentable, that's that novel and that unique, without getting into software patents, I don't think there's any point trying. It's not that it's worthless, but it's somebody can recreate it quick. So the shift log thing that I made, right, that takes all of your agent conversation history and puts it in Git notes. The guy that founded GitHub got, I think, $60 million, had a team of 12 engineers, spent 3 months making the exact same thing that I made as a moron with Claude Code on a like £20 a month subscription over a week.
So there's no security anymore.
Yeah, there's no defensibility in software. It's and you know, one of the things I think is interesting. Like 10 years ago, we go, software's eating the world. You know, Uber, like they don't have any cars, but they're replacing all the taxi companies. Airbnb have no hotels, and they're upending hospitality. Now we're finding out that agents are eating software, and all that's left are the bones of things like customer relationships, marketing, all those things that are really hard. And software developers, like I don't know how many of you folks are developers and we're like, you know, like when I retire or when between my next job, I'm gonna like, I've got this great idea for a business, it's gonna be amazing, I'm gonna make a website. Well, now you can do that over a weekend, and then you find out, oh, actually, the software wasn't the difficult part. Like actually running the business is the hard part. Sorry?
It's not a career path.
Yeah. Any more?
You mentioned the cost of moving quickly means more mistakes, or essentially more mistakes. So does that mean that we're accepting more risk in production?
The question was, are we accepting more risk in production because there's likely to be more mistakes? Yes, I think so. And there is, if we go to the extremes of talking about dark software factories, where we've got humans writing and reading zero code. These two tools, by the way, I've not read or written any of the code. I made one joke in the markdown and the README and it was crap. If we go to that full extreme of developers, or engineers not reading or writing code anymore, and things being validated by agents, then I think we end up in a position where outcome-driven development of just so with microservices, if you're Adidas or Deliveroo and you've got 1,000 microservices, you can't test that they all work all of the time. So you have really great observability, really great CI/CD, so you can fix forward very quickly. I think we end up in a world where you have that same approach but for functionality, and you define correctness not by testing the code, but by seeing that the right metrics go up. Like, we released this feature and we expect conversion rates to go up or something like that. And it becomes like this outer loop of what was the outcome that we wanted to see in the world. And worry less about bugs and whether the software works exactly the same between two releases just with an extra feature. I know that doesn't quite answer the question, but Martin is looming there and he's going to rugby tackle me in a minute.
Embracing chaos.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and anti-fragility. I'll stop.
That was very good.